and at least it like seeds things and things are
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah. I appreciate
do
you
well.
like pushing for that. It should be
Yeah,
fun. Yeah.
yeah.
See. All right. Let's see what's going on. Notifications are going out. Hopefully the sound's fine on the other side of things. We'll find out. Like I
Has it been a
noticed
little bit
some.
funky?
No, I just noticed like some of the settings got changed a little bit on Streamlabs that I'm using to pump it to LinkedIn and everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, hi Boyne. All right, let's see what's going on over on LinkedIn real quick. Oops. Oh, no, wait, that's okay. All right, cool. We got some people over there. Why can't I reply to this? That's weird. All right. Welcome, everyone. Blake, please introduce yourself and we'll get started.
Yeah. So, obviously Bowie knows me, know him and stuff like that, and probably some other folks that are out there. But anyway, my name is Blake Baxter. I wear a couple hats: co-founder, CEO,
All right.
and of Immersive
Welcome,
Enterprise
everyone.
Laboratories. We're
Blake, please
an
introduce.
independent animation studio. We essentially developed a new way of doing animation, which changes the way that it's been done for the past 100 years, which is a linear format and essentially destructive. To be able to move forward, you need to kind of destroy what you've done, but that's also how you find what you do want in it. Our process is iterative, and so it takes all the efficiencies um, and implements it into being a much more quicker way and higher quality for a lower lift that's involved. That iteration also unlocks ability for transmedia, where that's typically done in various silos. Where this now you can actually reuse assets across multiple platforms. So, say you're doing a TV show or a movie, you're also able to implement the social media campaigns. You can even have animated characters up running around and stuff like that, and doing collectibles and licensing, merchandising, even pushing it into a Fortnite island or, building a video game with those assets too. So it's quite fun and interesting. Always have had a passion for democratization of industries and emerging technologies that can do it. Also, the other hat I wear is I have essentially it operates like a family office, but it's a VC private equity kind of check size. And that's a group that's out of Singapore that I'm a partner at. And we do a variety of investments. We're called Black Run. For the reason is that we take harder and more challenging routes that we kind of make look easy, essentially, right? Because that's kind of what like really good skiers can do when they're going down a mountain. I'm not personally a skier, but that's where it comes from. So yeah, I'm a cyclist, as most people know.
You still get to slalom and have some fun hitting those speeds, so
Exactly.
it's similar.
Exactly.
You get it.
Yeah.
Right on. So yeah, welcome everyone that's joining us from YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, in addition to over on Startmata, where we're hosting this. If you have any questions for Blake, post them in the chat, or if you're on Startmata, raise your hand. Let me know to bring you up on stage, and I can do that. If you don't have any specific questions at the moment, just share what you're working on, and Blake can also provide insights, feedback, and advice based on the project. There might be something that he can point out or call attention to that you're unaware of, or may want to put a little more, of a focus on. So yeah, greetings everyone. Glad you're here. While we wait for some questions, Blake, you're talking about how you're getting ready to go to another conference, and you mentioned how there's a little bit of a stress involved in that. And everyone that's working on a career or a business venture, an entrepreneur, stress is part of this whole, experience. It's a day-to-day thing, just existing. I'm curious, how are you managing that, and to really kind of get a little bit more insight into that, how has that changed as, you've aged and gotten a lot more experience in these different roles?
Yeah, no, that's good. Gary, you've heard me talk about this and a lot of other people, but I think stress should be embraced, right? The reason that we are all here is because the stresses from the environments that are around us have manipulated the genome, right? Our literal DNA. The reason why that our eyes are the color that they are, the skin, the way that we look, everything that's involved, the nature that's all around us is because of the stressors or the impact of environment that has happened and occurred, right? So if you kind of have that perspective, it is stress that makes us all who we are, right? And everyone has gone through their own different versions of stress and things like that. So I think that's a constant reminder of it, right? There was a very, very interesting element. I love trees, hippie at heart, if you want to call it that. Um, I love trees, right? I think trees are an amazing example of this. There was a story I was reading. Probably going to get 70% of it correct, but I think the value is still there with it, where um, they were doing an experiment and I always mess it up because Biodome is the movie, Biosphere 2 is where they did the experiments, right? So the old school Pauly Shore movie, right? But so they were doing these experiments and they had these trees that were built inside that were growing inside and everything. And this is a controlled environment. It's very incubator kind of like, and that what they're trying to do is being able to see if they can go grow things, on another planet and sustain life in these kind of like these giant domes sitting in the Arizona desert. I think it was Arizona, maybe New Mexico too. But what ended up happening is that these huge trees suddenly in the middle of the night where no one is out there, nothing at all, and these researchers suddenly just heard this crashing coming down, and they all run out because they're like, what is this, a ghost, what is it, right? There's like, did someone come in? They're all freaking out in major ways, but they just see that the trees actually fell over on themselves, right? And what they realize is that because there weren't elements, there wasn't the snow, there wasn't freezing, it wasn't hot, it wasn't cold, it was all completely temperate, completely controlled, and nice and gravy for everyone, right? And what they realize is that trees, the reason why that they are the way that they are, the trunks and everything grows and around and everything like that, is because of the stress of environments that are around them. They grow strong, they grow big and tall and large. Look at a sequoia, right? Look at an oak tree, right? Look at all of these, even trees that are very young growth, right? They all have a purpose, and they've all been they're all there and in our world today because of the stresses around and how they're growing strong. The same thing goes with us, right? And I like to use that as a reminder because then it's like, okay, embrace it, face it, and that makes, to me personally, me much more secure in the challenges that are ahead. So, yeah, I guess in short, right? There's a cliche for this, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Um, at the same time, there is very toxic stress. There's a really bad stress out there, right? And just push that crap away. So,
Yeah, I learned a term more recently. There's like the toxic stress, and then there's eustress. I think it's EU stress, and that's the good stress that you're referring to, that you really want to embrace and celebrate and feel good about, and be aware that it's helping you really become stronger as a result of
yeah.
that. Um, yeah, hang on. Let's see what Boyne's saying. Universe 25. Boyne, what Universe 25? Do you recognize that, Blake?
Universe 25. I do not. Bowen. Let's hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, feel free, Boyne, to expand on that. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so so like kind of like building on this, like the embracing it and everything. You've done a few conferences so far with your company, IEL, and you're getting ready for a big one. And like you mentioned as we were talking in the green room, you thought you're going to be one of many companies showcasing on the floor with your partner, but it's just you. And I'm curious, again, going back to the previous experience you've had with these conferences and, kind of really creating an experience for people to have on the floor. Uh, how are you feeling about the extra focus being put on you at this show? And what are you going to apply from the lessons learned from the previous experience you've already had to hopefully have this one go a little bit smoother, be more impactful, more enjoyable for everyone involved, but also, again, going back to the stress element, have a less stressful experience for yourself and your team doing this.
Yeah, yeah. Excuse me. Sorry. Um, no, I think what's exciting about this, right, is that we're our partners, HP. We're showing off some of their new tech, right? That's driven with AMD and NVIDIA GPUs, CPUs, right? And that's just exciting in itself because here these are amazing machines and they enable us to do so much more with what they are currently up to, right? They're currently, on the NVIDIA side with their GPUs, there's some technological advances of their chips, but also then understanding how to use it within the Unreal Engine. So the conference that Gary is talking about, for everyone else to know, it's UE Fest, it's Unreal Engine Fest in Orlando. It's going to be next week, and we're going to be so HP is bringing us out there with NVIDIA and AMD to show off all this tech. We're there really uh, explaining what our workflow is, this new way of doing animation, right, and how it can accelerate things and unlock the creatives and the ROI and this ability to do extremely high quality animation for a fraction of what the cost used to be, right? And in it, we're also doing a presentation, kind of going through it, a bunch of our other tech partners as well. That enables us to do a lot of the fun things and everything like that. So back to it, I think each conference is always a learning experience. We do have a lot more assets that we can show publicly. One of the big things that happened about a year ago is that we didn't have much that we could show to the public, right? And then so what we decided to do is actually take some of our original IP that we're doing and then bring that out to the public so they can start to see. And we really wanted to show how the sausage was made, right? We want to show this is midstream, mid production, and now we also have final productions that we're able to show everyone at the same time, and we have a multitude of them, which is just great overall, right? So for everyone to have a good experience, a lot of this is going to be one-on-one, or a few people coming up and us showing the various elements and how they apply to each person, because each person that is coming up, they might be wanting to see what the processing power is of the GPU, right? Or they want to see how we're putting together, and, like, for example, we can do location scouting in animation now, which is to creatives that are out there. That's brand new. That's like most people have never even heard that before. But now we can actually fly someone around in an environment, land them, show them exactly where the cameras are going to be set up, where the scene is going to happen, and then even if it's a rough setup of the cameras, we can then show, and then we can start going through the entire acting sequence, because we do use mocap for this. Mocap is not the final. We do have animators that come on, but then we're also able to show live, real time, what it actually will look like in an example of it, and the story along with it, and just show it. So for us, what we love about it is that we're evangelizing people, showing them kind of light at the end of the tunnel where the direction of the industry is going, and we're tip of the spear. We're driving this forward aggressively, and the more people that start to see it, the more their eyes wake up to it, because kind of what I said before about it being linear versus iterative is that the linear process is destructive. So if you talk to a creative and you tell them that basically even if it's half the work is going to be thrown out, which usually it's much more than that, but even half the work is going to get thrown out to understand what they do want from it and then make that final product. That's very detrimental to someone that who's creative, right? Even if they're being paid for it, right? It's still that cycle of like, wait, no, that's thrown, and moving forward. This is that what I love about this for creatives is specifically is that it's built upon and iterated upon, and so the mistakes are much cheaper, right? Mistakes aren't multi-million dollar mistakes, right? And what you're doing is that you're able to see references and very specifically what colors look that way, what characters look that way, and then you can make the notes, and you're always moving forward instead of kind of having to go back and move forward, go back to move forward. So hope that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. We'll build on that a little bit more, but we got a question from William Love over on LinkedIn. William Love asks, so when presenting yourself to VCs, if you have gone through a massive amount of stress, how do you suggest presenting stressors so that experience isn't seen as a red flag? I see this with some founders I work with. And I posted the question in the chat over here on Startmata.
Awesome, awesome. No, that's good. Just for clarification, and Gary maybe reading it too. I'll pop it up. But presenting stressors. I mean, so I use this analogy, and obviously with the trees, you've already heard an analogy there, right? But I look at like a duck sitting on a pond, right, or a moving stream, right, where the duck sitting on top, right, is there's a current that's happening underneath it, and it's always shifting, but they're just staying in one place, and they look typically calm and collected, unless it's like some hurricane that's coming through, right? And so with it, that's kind of like what you need to show is that, or it is that the stressors are coming in, but you're processing them and how you take them on and how you use them as your energy and motivation and power to move forward, right? So then that's not a red flag. It's like, wait, this person can totally take this on. They know what they're doing. When stuff hits the fan, they're gonna be prepared, right? And so it's to that point, the experience of that is very key and important, right? I also go, here's another analogy too, just bear with me on them. But I used to play music in high school. I actually went to college originally for it and ended up switching majors, right? But my one of my old music instructors, the director for this philharmonic orchestra that I was part of, they always said that the most each thing that you do should look like it's the easiest performance ever done, right? And so what that means is that it's like if you're playing the most complicated thing, don't let anyone make it look like it is actually that stressful or that intense, right? You can play with intensity, you can do all these things, but make it look easy as possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've touched on this before with my own experience with friends that are professional musicians. Yeah, like one of them, he came off stage and he was telling me how he screwed up like a few times, and I was like, I could never tell. He's like, yeah, that's the trick. You
Yep.
never let anyone know. You just keep having fun. As long as it looks like you're jamming, you're having fun, no one will care. Even if the one, like, the musicians that are in the audience that are like
Yep.
very familiar with the pieces, like they'll notice, they still won't care because everyone's having fun. That's the whole point. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, I am assuming, right, when you're presenting to a VC, right, if you're evaluating a founder in front of you, like you're saying, it's about demonstrating the lessons learned, the methodology behind everything, and how you manage the stressors and that stress in a positive way. How you're turning that from that toxic stress into stress, which is beneficial and helping you learn and grow, and ultimately getting you to be a more effective, business leader or founder or whatever it may be. So yeah.
Yeah. And even something you noted on there, Gary, right, is that even the musicians that are in the audience, when they're hearing something, they hear a mistake, right? They're not being, and then you roll through it and you do it so well, right? Even sometimes the judge will be like, well, you messed that up, but because you rebalanced and because you came back so strong and effective and efficient and everything like that, they sometimes give more praise. Maybe not on the point scale when they're judging, right? But the same thing goes with the VC. They know that you're probably nervous up there. They know that all these things are going on, but there's substance, and you're able to go through things, and you're able to explain through things, and they're seeing an essence of energy that is very engaging, right? That when something does stressful, something stressful happens, that you're able to roll with it and make it, turns lemon into lemonade, right? Another cliche for you.
No, I mean that that in itself is demonstrating how you manage that stress and you're staying cool under that pressure, right? It's like, oh yeah, you made a mistake, but it's showcasing that you know that it's not the end of the world, and what's the worst that's gonna happen? Like, oh, someone judges you in the moment. Like, if that's the case, then it's probably not a good person to be in partnership with, right? Like, so ignore them. Who cares? So yeah, there's a lot of good lessons to be learned from all that. New people coming over onto LinkedIn, welcome. Same going for Twitch, YouTube. If you're new here, use the text chat to post questions for Blake. I will relay them. Blake will answer them. And if you don't yet have any questions, share what you're working on. There's a lot of insights and feedback and advice that you can get that may surprise you. So don't be shy. That's the whole purpose of this, to give you access to a wonderful mentor in Blake and hopefully help you either get reassurance or awareness to different aspects of building a career, building a business, and working towards your dreams, ambitions. So yeah, don't be shy. Giscard, welcome over on Start Mata. As I posted in the text chat, feel free to use the text chat yourself, but if you would like to come up on stage and use your microphone, camera's optional. Make an account. You can join for free for, I think, 60 days as a supporter, and jump right in here. If you're being shy, you don't want to do that, again, just use the text chat. Let's see. Checking channels. There was something I wanted to ask you as a follow-up when we're talking. Oh, Boyne wants to come up. All right, let's bring Boyne up. I'll remember what I wanted to ask as we let Boyne come ask some questions.
And also, while he's coming up too, and just so other people know as well. So my background, it's always been around emerging technologies, right, and investments and things like that. So my background goes back to probably 2006, of being my mentor, having advising for him with a ultra high net worth, high profile person and their family office and business dealings. And then so around the technology side, I mean, I was looking at machine learning, 10, 12, 13 years ago, before it was called what AI is today. Um, uh, you know, uh, you know, early, mid days of AGI when that was in conversation. Ben Gertzel, you guys should look him up. He's quite. I think he's noted as coining the term AGI. And then just in general, blockchain was a big thing for a long time and still is. I still think that there's some importance in what the technology can offer, but overall, just emerging tech always been interesting. Everything from agriculture to real estate to even art and everything in between. So yeah.
Heck yeah.
What's up, buddy?
You're muted.
I did not want to interrupt the conversation, so I usually.
No, you're good.
So hey Blake, nice to see you again. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about Universe 25. It's a very old experiment. Actually, it was late 50s, early 60s performed, and it was behavioral experiment with rats. So they created a perfect environment for rats. So no stress whatsoever, right? Plenty of food, as much food as it is. It can support any population. Constant supply of food, constant supply of all needs. So as a result, the population grew to a certain extent and then completely collapsed.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a very famous experiment. Uh, I was reviewing as you guys were talking. I went to Wikipedia and review I mean, to refresh my memory on the details of the experiment. Uh, I am slightly disturbed to realize that our society, and I just realized that as I was reviewing it, our current society is exhibiting exactly the same effects that were happening during the Universe 25 experiment, and that's something I didn't expect to discover while looking through it. But nonetheless, it's a probably interesting separated topic. I just wanted to join the conversation to clear what I meant by pointing to Universe 25, because I found what you described with the tree experiment
Yeah.
uh, to be mirroring what I remember was happening in the Universe 25 experiment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It feels very something that Malcolm Gladwell would do an experiment on in a lot of his talks and his books and things like that. Kind of along the lines of when he was he's talked about how cultures or just groups, right? There's a tipping point, of course, in his book, Tipping Point, of when they start to not collapse but start to form different sects, and that's around, like, I think he used to say like the 100, about 150 people typically, right? Sometimes less, more, but it's like in that kind of range and whatnot.
Yeah,
Always
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
Universe 25, or also is known as behavioral sync. Uh, that's much more disturbing, and it's considered one of the really disturbing experiments because it led to the complete collapse and extinction of the colony.
yeah, wild.
So yeah, it's a very disturbing from that point of view experiment, and again, it mirrors to very great extent what you describe about the trees. So there appears to be a whatever mechanism that can lead to this type of collapse in case stress is removed from the environment. And again, I mean, I have not done my own studies on that, but there appears to be multiple experiments, more or less, confirming that there is something there.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Thanks, boy.
Right
No
on.
worries. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the reason I wanted to join, so you can kick me out now.
Yeah.
It's all good. All right. Cool. We got a couple questions coming in from LinkedIn, so I'll move you down, Boyd. Appreciate it.
See you, man.
There we go. All right. So William Love asks, how do you feel about the issues with IP litigation with AI, and how it affects risks that VCs view with AI startups?
um I mean, that's really broad, right? I feel like AI is now a term that kind of is like what people used to say, like, I work in tech, right? Someone can work in tech and they manufacture, screws, for example, right? And not dismissing someone who manufactures screws, but that's where tech has gone, right? Now AI is so ingrained in so many things. When it comes to the IP litigation, you just have to be aware of where the IP rights and copyrights and, counsel your whoever your GC is, whoever your legal advice is, because that's where I would get the information from, right? Um, Part of it, right? I think that there's going to be extensive litigation. Eventual goes up to the court through the court systems of understanding exactly what it is, but it's also, if I would be really leery with a startup in putting money into it if what they're basing their product on is someone else's IP. Um, that's just in general. That's my outlook. That might be considered a safe harbor scenario where there's others who are a little bit more risky and they see it in a different light. But that's just my perspective on it, right? I have seen amazing things that are out there. That is I've seen many things that are out there that do not infringe upon IP of others, right? And they are doing it in very, let's call it ethical ways. of going forward. And so those are the ones that I'm most interested in. Yeah.
Right on. We got a couple more questions. Okay, so ATF asks, what are the tools to attract investors to start with founders from scratch?
Um,
Yeah, kind of broad, but
I'm not sure
yeah.
what that means.
So
Do you? Yeah.
yeah, ATF, you can provide a little more context to this, but from what I'm getting from this is, uh, yeah, if you're an early stage founder and you're trying to attract investors, find investors, what tools would you recommend utilizing to do that? And it sounds like a matchmaking, sourcing kind of question.
Yeah. Me, I, um, I'm stumped on this one, to be honest. What I do is that you can do your research yourself. There's groups and companies out there that can provide you lists. When it comes to tool sets, I'm not sure. Um, yeah, Gary, can you think of any tools for that?
I mean,
Because usually it's people with lists anymore, right?
yeah, like the main tools are just to kind of like identify which investors are out there, but there's not really any tools to attract investors, right? Like you can use
Yeah,
Crunchbase, you can use Signal, and you can find lists to identify, okay, which investors are in your region or your field industry market.
but
And
that's also just to like approach them, so not even attract. So I'm not sure on the attracting point. That really comes down to what that company is, right? Wouldn't you say? And really what their approach is, right? So the tools are your actual tools themselves, right? And I guess maybe if we want to expand on that, investors are looking for people who have tremendous opportunity and ability to execute on what their vision and their dream is. Anymore, investors aren't looking for someone who just has an idea, but they're actually looking for the technology that's already been built out, that is showing traction, metrics, and everything like that. That then has an upward potential and trajectory. So I would say that those are the tools, right? Is the tools that you're building within your company is what makes things attractive, right? And also you as the person and who you are as an executive, who you are as in personality wise, and again, ability to execute. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's I think it's one of these. I think the idea I think behind this is there any technology, software, tools available to shortcut something that doesn't have a shortcut? It's not meant to have a shortcut, right? Because the way that you effectively fundraise with investors is, as you just mentioned, Blake, um, being very strategic and intentional about who you're reaching out to, when you're reaching out to them, and why you're reaching out to them, but also demonstrating through who you are that you're a person that's going to be enjoyable to work with and trustworthy and someone that has a personality, a methodology to back up your claims of the potential you're able to realize with your venture, right? And that takes time to develop between yourself and the investor or party of investors if it's like a group. And it like we talk about all the time. It starts with just seeding that relationship by reaching out to them as a mentor without asking them to be a mentor, but just reaching out to them and be like, hey, I really admire this work that you've done. I'm working on this. Can you give me 15 minutes to run something by you? I've got a question about this very relevant thing, and see how that goes, right? And if that goes well, you can follow up, and eventually you're like, hey, you know what? I'm working on this pitch deck. I'd love your feedback on the deck. And now you're pitching them your your company without pitching them, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
these little ways to develop a relationship, test that relationship, vet it, without rushing right to pitching investors. And yeah, again, it's something that a tool doesn't really exist, and it probably shouldn't because it's built on relationships, and you can't
Mm-hmm.
fast forward relationships.
Yeah, yeah. That's why it's like I think the key with it is around the execution component, right? And part of that execution is how you're approaching certain people and executing on even the conversation, right? That's why it's kind of like the root of execution, right? To your point, right? If someone comes to me, right, and they say, "Hey, what are you investing in?" right? And I explain, upward mobility shows a ton of traction. They're cash flow positive, blah, blah, like showing all of these metrics there. And they're like, oh, do you want to see this MVP for the startup? Like, that's so disconnected, right? However, if you go up to an angel investor or you go up to a seed investor and you say, hey, I have this company, we're going to raise $40 million for it and a valuation of 400, it's the best thing that's ever happened, and yada, yada. And they're like, well, I that's outside of what they're investing in, right? And that's also why VCs, they have very specific thesis statements, right? So understand what they're actually investing in and how it fits. For example, there's things that can be touching an industry and that might fit in, right? But you also don't want to square peg round hole things, because then you're wasting their time. You don't look professional, like you know what you're doing. So I would say is that understanding how the flow of the industry works on the investment side, so then you can actually complement what they're looking for and what they're after. Um, that's it, right? On the other side, as Gary is saying, if you do have a friend who is a VC and they are Series B plus investors, right? But you do want them to look at your deck, right? That is still a very valuable thing, because also, one, you have the relationship there, so use that to your abilities, right? Get their feedback with it, and then also they might be like, well, actually, it's not going to be right for me, but I do know these people over here that might be of interest, and then they come support, right? Because they could look at it, and what they want is you to grow. So then, because they're a Series B, they can invest in it when that does occur. So
Yeah, and that goes back to why you want to build these authentic relationships and make that the heart of what you're doing, because people want to support you, right? And if
mm-hmm.
you're not a good fit for them, they're going to be more likely to introduce you or share your information with someone that is a good fit. And at the end of the day, like most things, and we say this all the time, it's a matchmaking game, and you need to be an expert matchmaker. And it starts with understanding who you are, what you're doing, what you stand for, and all these different elements that factor into your brand, and your personal brand, and also your company brand, and all these different elements that make up your company and product and services, and ensure that you're reaching out to others that align with all that, both strategically and also, again, culturally. So everyone has a great time working together and everyone's on the same page and just, having a great time. And like you said, too, if you're not taking the time to do that and play a matchmaker, you're going to look unprofessional. But the other side, or the other factor too, that is likely to happen is you're going to look desperate, because like why are you wasting time just chasing after these people that are clearly not a good fit, right? And that's not going to be attractive at all. So all these different elements of how you behave, how you execute, is going to build more attractiveness to your team, your company, your deal, all these different elements. We got more questions. Okay, Isaac asks, sounds like a very cool and innovative business. I once heard a quote that says it's not the type of business that makes it successful, but the person who is behind it. Might not work in all cases. But here's my question for Blake. What is your philosophy in life and business? That's a fun one. Kind of touched on this a little
That is a
bit.
good one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially as we've been touching it a little bit upon it this whole time. I would actually say with that quote, right, around it too, is it's actually the hybrid of it, right? Kind of goes back to even sociology, where it's like they talk about nature versus nurture a lot, or they used to when I was in school, right? And I always felt that there's the nature and the expressive, the genes are expressed, right, and what the impacts of that happens is based off the stress and how those genes then react to stress as well, right? Where certain stress might turn someone to having skin cancer, right, because of just being beaten up by the sun, and another person might be just suddenly have complete protection to skin cancer. Who knows, right? But the point is that it's very much of a hybrid, I feel. because it is because yes, a person might be able to do so much, right, but then is limited by what that company and that business is actually doing, right. I've actually seen that on many occasions, and then that's why they need sort of a strategist and an operator to come in to really then position them and say, hey, have you looked at it this way? What's your account receivables? What's the current contracts? Are you actually charging enough for what the product is? Does it make sense long term, etc. When it goes back to philosophy in life and business, for me, I think in life, it's my philosophy is lower barriers of entry, creating abundance. I think that there's a tremendous amount of impressive people that are out there that need the opportunity for what their let's call it their optimum self is, right. I think everyone has that, right. And a lot of what you see in successful people is that they've had the opportunity to actually and it just is the right timing with things where they found it and they explored it and they were able to do the things that just meant and clicked well for them, right. It comes down to me, like I use this for an example. I'm a very forward momentum sports person instead of lateral. And so, what that means, and I had this conversation with this old adventure racer coach of mine, where he's like, look at all the sports you do, they're all going forward, right? Whether it's running, whether it's cycling, mountaineering, even now rock climbing and things like that. Those things I do quite well at, even with rollerblades, right? But in being a sponger or bodyboarder, right, out in the water, right? Put me on a surfboard, put me on a skateboard, a snowboard, right? Those things go all out the window, right? It's weird for me. Like I always want to reposition myself to be square, facing forward again, right? All that to be said is that in the philosophy of life, it's finding the things that really resonate well with you, right? And because we are in a world of capitalism, right, that then translates also into business. I think authentic relationships are key. Being authentic in what you do in your business is key as well. And how can you make a lasting impact on the world around you? I was at an event, Gary, it might have been lunch, but there was a guy, whichever one this was, he was talking about how he used to invest just based off metrics and numbers and what the multiple was going to be out of it. And then something happened in his life, and he then turned around to doing it with purpose-driven investments, right? And how that kind of impacts and reacts to it. I thought that was amazing and a beautiful thing, right? And that so many people can embrace that type of philosophy as well, but also this is mine, right. It's not necessarily for everyone else. There's certain people where they're able to make an impact even whether they know it or not, because they're just good at numbers and understanding what those numbers and the results are going to be through the multiple of that business, right. I used to talk about how there's so many companies that are out there that are trying to do a lot of not necessarily nonprofits, right? But and I've no issue with them. But there's certain companies that are out there that are just trying to, almost be nonprofit or not making any money because they just want to do a solution that's great that's out there. You're competing against a world that is trying to make money off of a product. And whether you like it or not, that's the reality. And so I look at it as another philosophy is that you have to understand the constructs that you currently operate in, even if you don't agree with them, but you have to understand them so then you can then use those to your advantage point and understand where the lines are and how close you can get to the lines to be able to execute on the thing that you want, right. If you're putting yourself in a position where you're lowering yourself further down by or inhibiting your ability to be successful, right, that's on you, and you need to then get outside of it, if you will. So
Love it. All right, we got another question from William Love asking, or yeah, well, stating and then asking. Historically, bridge rounds have had a negative connotation. With bridge rounds now comprising about 46% of seed stage activity in Q1 2025. What specific metrics and milestones should founders focus on to secure a primary round rather than needing bridge financing? What resonates? Perhaps building on previous answers. And again, the questions in the chat for you.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. Overall, right now, money is very expensive. When money is expensive, right, it means that there's investments that are lowered, right? So people are actually looking for. I shouldn't say this blanketly at all, but again, it goes back to kind of what Gary was saying: is that if there are bridge, if there's bridge loans that are going out and bridge rounds in general that are going out, it's because investors are viewing it as a way to make to make a buck, right? That's what they see it as. That's what's happening, right? And for that reason, the reason why that you know that statistic might be also impacted by there's a lower amount of activity in other types of investments. So this is now becoming a more dominant, right, at 46%. That's much is a pretty big number. And so what ends up happening is that might be because there's lower numbers of other things that are occurring. I don't know specifically, haven't looked into the stat, et cetera, but just going off of what this information is that again, it is a very tough environment out there. Investments aren't as going as active as they have been in other times. When interest rates are lower, that's typically when investments, again, money being cheap means that investments happen a lot more, right? Being more money is being borrowed, and so with high interest rates, that's what is inhibiting a lot of it out there. To go into what milestones and metrics, it depends on the business, right? But I would say if you're able to show a good cash flow and if there's a purpose for what the investment is for example, I need $5 million because I am going to be able to get $50 million in revenue in this year alone, just based off $5 million. I need a revolving line of credit, and that's the reason why, blah blah blah, because my accounts receivables are 120 days and trying to get them down to 90 days, whatever that is. Book business versus business that is closed and business that has closed and money in the bank, all those various things. So traction. That's really around the milestones and metrics around it. Otherwise, I know that's very vague, but that's just the reality is because it comes down to the actual business that you have versus, and it's kind of like there's all these investor pots over here. There's all these types of milestones and metrics over here. Starts to get very specific. So understanding fully would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, context is key. We say it all the time.
Yeah.
Also, going back to the last answer that you were giving in regards to businesses that are taking on more of that nonprofit kind of operational approach, Will was asking if you were referring to B Corps or if they're included in that, and then my additional commentary or clarification is like just in the concept of a business operator not prioritizing profit.
Yeah, no, I mean, so the what I was kind of talking about there is around, like, I've seen companies do their pitches and do their explanation about what they do, and they go into what the metrics that aren't aren't driving essentially revenues forward, right? And I'm not saying that there's a ton of these companies, but I have seen it happen where, unfortunately, in the world of investment, they're not looking for those attributes necessarily, unless it is a very specific impact investment company. But even an impact investment company, they're looking for what they can do to create a sustainable business that then has a way to uplift and create an abundance, if you will. Um, you know, Whether that's agriculture, whether that's a lot of times it goes into agriculture, it goes into efficiency and energy type projects and things like that. So that's really what I was talking about there. Um, and the reality with it, right, is that goes back to philosophy of life and in business, is that understanding constructs that are around you, and even if you don't necessarily agree with them, that's the rules and those are the laws, and that's what you have to operate within. So yeah.
Appreciate the clarification. Um, yeah, so anyone else that's new joining us, we've got 10 minutes left. So, last call for questions if you have them. If you're on YouTube, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Twitch, use the text chat, post them, I'll relay them. As much context as you can provide is helpful. So, Blake has more to work with. And yeah, again, those of you that are on Start Motto where we're hosting this and doing this from, feel free again to raise your hand, jump on stage if you want to ask questions, or use the text chat as well. Blake, while we're waiting for final little questions coming in, I remember what I wanted to ask. So when you're going to these conferences and you're learning along the way, what methodology are you and your team taking when you're applying design thinking? You're crafting what goals you want to achieve at the conference. Like, how are you prioritizing? How are you thinking this through to ensure that the goals align with what the business needs in the moment at that conference?
Yeah. I would say my my feelings on it, right? And my business partner Dan Urbach with IEL, he's tremendous in the creative side of things and structuring things in such a way that we're always telling a story, right? It comes down to storytelling, and that's really impactful for everyone that's around. Again, to your point, we also say context is king, right? Context is key and important, right? And so when we are talking to people, someone might not understand what we're doing, right? But then when they start to get into the weeds with it, they do, right? And also understanding where someone is coming from and where someone is going as well. All those elements are key. But as long as there's an impactful experience at the end, where then they're understanding something new. It's funny. I've said this a lot where people who've been in the industry, sometimes understanding what we're doing is just so different and foreign to them that there's a lot of pushback, and we actually like the pushback, right? Pushback is very key, and we start to explain through it. And as soon as there's that, like, there's always this like precipice and barrier that all of a sudden gets pushed through, and then as soon as that happens, they're like, I get this now, and it's they then apply their industry breadth of knowledge into what we're doing, and then it becomes very unlocking, right? At the same time, I think it's really funny because I'll explain this to people what we're doing in animation, right? Who have no experience in animation except for just enjoying the films that a lot of the people we've worked with have been part of. And what's funny is that the response is often, "Wait, isn't this how this has always been done?" And we're like, "No, that's not it, right?" And and I explain it like this: as a kid, I was always watching the TV, and there was always that frame, there was that box that you're looking at, right? And for me, I always want to jump in that world, right? I remember even telling my parents, I'm like, yeah, the rules of cartoons are this, right? Like Looney Tunes, you just don't look down, otherwise you fall. Like, if you do this, blah blah, you're like, oh, you'll be put back together. What all these like randomness of things, right? It was like there was like the movie, I think Brad Pitt was in it, Cool World, where he like goes into this animated world and it's all wild and zany. It's like that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to go be in Cool World. I know it's crass and smoking cigarettes, and there's a lot of stuff like that going on there, but I wanted to go in that world. And then all of a sudden, freaking, someone had to break it to me that no, is only that little cell that you're looking at. That's the world that you're seeing, right? There's nothing outside of that. And now in this world, we're able to unlock that. I think that's extremely exciting, and to show people, hey, you can now go in this world. This is what it looks like in real time. You can look left, you can look right, you can do all these amazing things, and that's exciting because all of a sudden you see people get really giddy, right? When we do our stage shoots, we've done it where there's there's been 50 people on stage because it's kind of an open house thing, and we have 10, 12 performers going and running around and doing their thing, and they're having so much fun on stage, right? Those performers are. And then the people who have been in the industry for a long time are like, wait, is this how it always is? We're like, yeah, it actually is, because we just let these creatives go be creative. Like they're finally able to really tap. I shouldn't say finally. They're able to tap into an essence of them that they previously.
William, thanks for the compliment. I'm glad, yeah, you enjoyed the office hour. Um, Let me double check real quick. I don't think we got any final. I think we got everyone that had questions, so I think we're good. Uh, yeah, fantastic. Blake, do you have any final thoughts, advice? Have you seen something recently that you want to call attention to people in the audience to be aware of and learn from?
Interesting. Things happening recently. You know, I think that there's sure. Actually, earlier today, there's a whole like story. A lot of people might have seen it or whatever. It's going around, but like $1.5 billion unicorn AI business suddenly just comes out that there's a bunch of human programmers behind it that were being paid very little money, right, overseas to do it, right. I think that there's going to be a bunch of that does happen, right? There's been instances where we've been shown AI technology, and it has been around visual, right? And while I'm not saying that it's not possible at all, it is. It comes down to the data sets that they're working with, and compute power and everything that they're doing. But there's like a tremendous amount of human intervention and cleanup. I think we're going to be starting to enter the actual world where people understand that it's not just building a race car and that race car is going to go extremely fast. You still need to put a driver in there. And are you going to put a random schmuck like me into that race car, or are you going to put in like a buddy of mine who literally races race cars for a living, right? He's going to go destroy the track with that. Well, tear it up in the good sense of it, right? He's going to go perform insanely well. Whereas me, yes, I'll go fast, but looks like sloppy, will be all squirrely, open wheel racing car, right? Um, all that to be said, I think that there's I like to see is that we're an accelerated form of an industrial revolution coming to, right? And if you look at the past, I like to do that because of my sociology and socioeconomic theory background and anthropology. If you look at it in that sense of it, what happened before, learn from it. Yeah. um, yeah, and then learn from everything that you've seen before, that you've experienced before, that you've read about before, and apply it to yourself, right? If I think back to like the 80s and even in the 90s, where people are like, computers are a fad and everything like that, they were never a fad, right? And the people who thought that and were like, no, pushing against it, are the ones who are going to get taken out by the meteor, just like the dinosaurs, right? And like, I say embrace things, embrace technology, understand it to the understanding that you're capable of doing, and how do you apply it into your daily life, your life overall, right? And embrace and accept that certain things are here. So yeah.
Heck yeah, I love it. Good insights, good story. Um, yeah, I think that's it. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate the wonderful questions from everyone. Appreciate the reference from you, Boyan. Yeah,
Yeah,
Blake,
thank
we'll
you
do this
everyone.
again next month. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Those of you that are in the Los Angeles area, Blake and I are doing a happy hour event tomorrow at Peddler's Fork in Calabasas. It's free. Feel free to join us if you're available. There's information on our Eventbrite and Startmata, and yeah, on LinkedIn too, on the 805 Startups page. So with that, I hope everyone has a
4:30 p.m. This is the time.
4:30 p.m. Yes, thank you, Blake. There's a time, 4:30 p.m. So yes, with that, hope everyone has a wonderful week and had a great weekend for the holiday. And Blake, any last things to say?
Yeah, no, I just appreciate the community, Gary. It's something that you and Alon have done so well at, right? And what you're doing as a whole, right, is extremely impactful, right? And I think it's amazing. I've told so many people, of the progression of 805 startups and where it's going, how it's going, and stuff like that. And it's always people just love it, man. There's a different vibe that comes with it. I think tomorrow, anyone that comes out to the event, I think what's interesting with it, it's right on. It's an 818, but it's on the cusp of LA and the Caneo Valley, which the portal to Ventura County, if you will. But I think that it really does this connective element where it's right next to just the border of LA. Like literally, Peddler's Fork is the border corner. Sagebrush is actually in LA County. Funny enough, because it's Woodland Hills. Technically, it looks like it's Calabasas, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And we'll see people there. It's going to be fun to see how things flourish, and just excited in general with the community that you've been able to provide for everyone, Gary. So, yeah.
Well, that was a lot more than I expected, and I appreciate it. That's really beautiful. And yeah, for those of you that can't make it or in different areas around the world that are tuning in, be part of your community. That's like, what we're doing here is just trying to help everyone connect and be supportive and collaborative and not competitive. It doesn't need to be that way. So go be social, go be a neighbor. And with that, we're signing off. So take care, everyone. Thank you again.